Okay, online students, I'm so sorry. I think I did not switch on the mic. Sorry for that. Am I audible now? Please type a yes for that. Online students, am I audible? শুনা পাইছা নাই যদি শুনা পাইছা এটা yes বা কিবা এটা লিখা Sanjana, can you hear me? Okay, যেহেতু mic to on নাছিলে, so we'll just repeat what we have said. So these are the things that we need to study. Online students, I think you all can hear. Okay, so these are the things that we are going to study in this chapter. We'll come across a word called as biodiversity, the diverse forms of organisms that you find in this world, plants, animals, etc. Next, we come across the words called as classification, taxonomy, and systematics. And here we'll be studying about what is classification, what is taxonomy, what is systematics. Next, we'll be talking about nomenclature. As we were talking about nomenclature, what we said, it is nothing but naming of an organism. We have two types of name, vernacular name and scientific name. Within the group of scientific names, we need to talk about binomial nomenclature in details, right? And finally, we have something called as taxonomic categories. What is taxonomic categories? As I said, when we are talking about classification, we can go for a taxonomical classification, right? Whatever classification you do, what do you do in classification? You arrange all the informations that you have into certain groups and subgroups, right? So instead of using that word group and subgroup, we'll be using certain words called as categories. Have you heard the word called as taxonomic hierarchy? Taxonomic hierarchy, I think you have known this one, na? This is something that you all know, right? Species, genus, family, order, this arrangement. So this is what is called as taxonomic hierarchy. You need to study each and every point about each and every category, right? So this is the content of the chapter. We'll be starting with the first topic, that is biodiversity. Please write. And as I said, details about biodiversity is something that we are going to study in the chapter called as biodiversity and conservation, right? So it is only a few points that we are going to write. Please come. Yeah. So since we are going to do this chapter in class 12, we are not going to write much, only 2 more sentences more. So what you need to read from here is the numbers, right? Question has been asked about what is the number of known species, 1.7. Sometimes in the option it could be 1.8 also, provided 1.7 is not there. So you have to mark it 1.8. Is the point clear? Right? And out of this, as we have discussed, animals and plants, which group is more? Obviously the animals are more as compared to plants. When we talk about animals, in this chapter, I mean in class 12 portion, remember, you have studied something called as pie charts. Biodiversity, you have talked about something like this, no? Something pie charts, you have, for example, if you are talking about plants, here fungi was written, then all those, the different groups, right? So there are certain type of pie charts that we need to study in this topic, but this is something that we are going to study in class 12 portion and not here, right? So here, what is the thing that we will study? When we talk about animals, animals has again been divided into vertebrates and invertebrates. We are not going to write it down, but we know. Right? If you are talking about invertebrate portion, invertebrates of jiman bilak ase, who forms the highest group? It is the insects. If you are talking about the vertebrate group, who forms the highest number? It's the fishes. Right? So we'll be discussing that later. As far as plants are concerned, according to the NCERT book or according to this chapter, if you are talking about all the types of plants, fungi forms the highest group. But however, I think you all have read Plant Kingdom. Porisan hai Plant Kingdom. Right? Since, okay, what we'll do in this classes, since you all have already studied the course before, so what you have to do is, you have to bring back the things that you have studied previously, right? So you all are not fresh, you all are not class 11 students, right? That you are completely new to the chapter or you are completely new to the biology portion. Since you all have already studied, so we need to bring out all the points that we remember from the course that we have studied. Okay, so what I wanted to say is, when we are talking about plants, as I said, you all have studied Plant Kingdom, right? You have talked about something called as 5 kingdom classification. Have you heard about these words, 5 kingdom classification? Whittaker's 5 kingdom classification, something that you have studied in biological classification. Jana ne na jana? Na jana? Kune na? Okay. Who is not aware of 5 kingdom classification? Only you? You don't know? See, it's nothing bad to say that I don't know, right? You all have come to the class to know something, right? If you know everything, there's no point of coming to the class. First point. Second, don't feel shy. The more number of doubts you have in the class, the more or the less number of doubts you will have during your exam. You have to clear your doubts, okay? So biological, okay. So biological classification is the second chapter of your NCERT book, class 11 portion. হয় না পঢ়িছিলা নাই এবাৰটো পঢ়িছা তুমি ড্ৰপাৰ হয় নহয় ড্ৰপাৰ ন এবাৰ 11 তোমাৰটো এইটো ক্লাছ নহয় ওকে ক্লাছটো কৰিবলৈ দিছে সেইকাৰণে তুমি নাজানা সো ইয়াতে 11 ৰ কোনবা আছে নে এনিওয়ান ফ্ৰম 11 নো না ওকে সিন্স উই আৰ ইন আ ড্ৰপাৰ বেচ they have already studied something, so they know. You will not know because you did not study. Does not matter. We will study gradually, okay? So we know something called as 5 kingdom classification, right? So according to 5 kingdom classification, okay, what about you? Biological classification, have you studied before? No? Why? You have skipped that chapter? No, not 12 biology. This is 11 biology. You have not studied? You had biology or you did not have? This is like, what was your combination, PCM or PCMB? PCB. And you did not study 11? Very good. What can I say? Okay, does not matter. We will study 11 here itself, okay? So, for rest of the students who have studied and for you also, we have something called as classification. Classification is something, what is classification? Arrangement, right? Different types of classification system has been given from scientists from time to time. Agoteo classification disile, etiao dise, right? So we have primitive type of classification like, if you remember, 2 kingdom classification. We have something called as 3 kingdom classification, 4 kingdom classification, 5 kingdom classification, and together with that we have a 6 kingdom classification also, right? So when we talk about classification, classification of what? Classification of all the organisms that are present in this world, right? So what, as I said, no, what is this? This is nothing but a classification, yes or no? We are, what we are doing, total number of organisms has been classified into 2 groups. So this is a type of classification. This type of classification would be called as what? 2 kingdom classification, because we are dividing all the organisms into just 2 groups. Is the point clear? So in this way, we have 2 kingdom, 3 kingdom, 4 kingdom, 5 kingdom and 6 kingdom classification. Ancient scientists and scholars, they were only related with 2 kingdom or 3 kingdom classification, but recent studies have shown we have 5 kingdom and 6 kingdom classification also, where all the organisms that is present in the world is divided into 5 kingdoms. In this case, all the organisms in the world is divided into 2 kingdoms. Is the point clear? So this is called as 2 kingdom classification. If you are talking about 5 kingdom classification, here all the organisms would be divided into 5 kingdoms. And what are the 5 kingdoms? Monera, Protista, then fungi, then Plantae, Animalia. Is the point clear? So this is also a type of classification, this is also a type of classification. Here the organisms has been divided into 2 groups, here the organisms has been divided into 5 groups. So which is the classification system that we accept now? We accept this 5 kingdom classification. So we need to learn who has given this. I think you remember the name of the, remember the name of the, who has proposed it. It's R.H. Whitaker, right? So what we can see here, the point of discussing this point is, according to this, according to Living World, what they have said is, amongst the plant group, who forms the highest? Fungi. So according to this information, what we understand, fungi belongs to the plant group, yes or no? Right? But according to 5 kingdom classification, fungi and Plantae are 2 different kingdoms. According to this classification, does fungi belong to plants? No. According to this classification, fungi belongs to what? Plants. According to this classification, fungi belongs to plants or fungi is an independent kingdom? এইটো classification মতে কি হয়? Fungi independent হয়. সেইটো classification মানে কি হয়? Fungi belongs to plant. Right? So no doubt this is a correct classification, but since we are talking about living world, we have to follow the NCERT book, the information that is given. So if a question is asked from Living World chapter, so which group forms the highest? It is always the fungi, since it's given in the NCERT book. But now we know that fungi is an independent kingdom, and if you talk about Plantae as a kingdom, so these are the 5 kingdoms. Suppose we take plants. If you talk about Plantae, or you can talk about the plant kingdom. So plant kingdom again has classification, right? We have groups of plants, yes or no? Plant kingdom consists of only one type of a plant, or it has different types of plants. It has different types of plants. What are the plants that we have? We have algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and angiosperms, right? So according to the latest classification, first point, fungi does not belong to Plantae, right? According to this, fungi belongs to Plantae. According to this, out of all the plants, whose number is the highest? It is the fungi that forms the largest group. According to this classification, out of all the 5 types of plant group, which group forms the highest? It is the angiosperms. Is the point clear? So you have to read the question properly and then you have to answer. Is the point clear? Yeah. No, only Monera. Only Monera. Right? We'll be discussing this later. So there is just one kingdom of prokaryotes, that is Monera. So bacteria is the best example. So is this part clear? You can look at clear? We'll go to the next part. Just continue writing. Okay, first we'll write and then we'll explain. Okay, write another point. Okay, write it down. One thing that I think you have noticed, as we are writing the sentences, as we are writing the note, there are certain points that we have marked, right? So these marked points talks about the thing that these are the things that you have to study for your exam, right? As when we are writing a note, we are forced to write sentences, but all the sentences obviously is not something that you will by heart, right? So you have to intelligently pick up the points that you have to study for your NEET, right? So out of all the points that we have written, so I think you can see there are just 2 points that we have to remember from this and not the entire thing that we have written. Is the point clear? Right? So in whatever chapters we do in the class, we have the note form, and in the note we have the marked information also, right? So please develop a habit of writing a short note. So if you write a short note about all the points that we have marked, you have a total collection of the things that you need to study at the last moment. Because you are not going to study each and every line first, you will not get time also. So it's very easy. It will become easier if you study only the points for the last time, right? So please develop a habit of writing the short notes. Anyway, is it over? Right? As far as the last point is concerned, it's not important. Did you understand this line? So whatever number of living organisms is present in this world is a result of nothing but evolution. Right? We understand what evolution is, right? And nearly this is the amount of number of species that is discovered every year. However, this is not very authentic also, because if you look into the latest information, the number might get changed. But this is something that's written in your NCERT, so we'll just study. But however, not important. What is important is this one. This point talks about what? This point talks about species diversity. Species diversity means diverse forms of species that are present in this world. The first point. Second point, whenever we are talking about species diversity in the world, is it something like this, that in the entire part of the world, the number of species would always be the same? Are you understanding the question? Species diversity talks about number of organisms present in this earth, right? What about the number? So we see in this earth, there are certain areas, might be the number of species might be more. There might be certain areas where the number of species might be less, yes or no? So species or organisms are not uniformly distributed in this earth, yes or no? Prithibit sob bostu eke homan ase niki? Nai. Are you understanding, right? So we see that the organisms does not have a uniform distribution. You cannot be saying that this part of the earth would have, suppose 30 animals, this part of the earth would also have 30 animals, not like that. The number keeps on changing. So this point talks about the fact, where will you find the highest number of organisms? We are not saying where will you find the highest number of animals. We are talking about the fact, where will you find the highest number of organisms? The highest number of organisms are found in the tropical belt, right? In this earth, we have two sections. If you divide the entire earth into two sections, we have something called as a tropical area, we have something called as a temperate area. Have you heard about these two words? Tropical climate, temperate climate. What is the difference? Tropical or temperate, duta word no, there are just two words, tropical climate and temperate climate. The basic point of difference is, tropical is something where the climate never changes. If it is hot, it will remain hot only, right? The entire, suppose we are talking about this place where we stay. Sometimes we have rainy season, sometimes we have winter season, sometimes we have summer. So we have seasonal changes. So seasonal changes is a characteristic of temperate area. If you are talking about tropical area, the season does not change. If it is hot, it will remain hot forever. If it is cold, it will remain cold forever, right? So the entire world is divided into two sections, either it is tropical or obviously we have subsections also, but broader classification is tropical and temperate. So if you are comparing tropical area and temperate area, which area will have the largest number of organisms? It's always the tropical area, right? As compared to temperate, tropical area will have larger organisms. So species diversity would be maximum in tropical or temperate. Tropical. Is the point clear? So we see maximum or majority of species diversity in the tropical areas. In the tropical areas, again we have sections, tropical grasslands, tropical rainforest, tropical plains, etc., etc. So tropical rainforest, I think you have heard something called as Amazon rainforest, right? So Amazon obviously is an example of a tropical rainforest where you have the highest number of organisms. So this point talks about the fact that species diversity is highest in tropical rainforest if you're talking about the land area. If you're talking about water, it is highest in something called as reef. Now what is a reef? One example of a reef is a coral reef. But what is a reef? A reef is a collection or a huge amount that gets deposited in an area. That is called a reef. Suppose we have this as a water area, right? In this water, maybe you have a collection of organisms in this part, right? A huge collection of certain things. This would be called as reef. It's a heap, right? And who forms the heap here? Maybe the dead remains of the animals, right? Underwater you have animals, the animals die. Some of them does not get decomposed and they get collected, right? So ultimately they will form a huge structure. That structure would be called as a reef. One example of a reef is coral reef. Do you know what a coral is? A coral is nothing but a sea organism, right? It looks something like this. It's bushy in nature, right? And it is made up of calcium carbonate. So it's very brittle. Soon sini pao. Now I think you understand that calcium carbonate that people used to have with pan. Panor logot soon khai na khai. That is calcium carbonate, right? So just a point, coral organism, underwater organism, right? They remain in a reef, and that reef is called as coral reef. Huge collection of corals in an area is called as coral reef. That area has the highest tropical diversity if you're talking about water, right? So this point talks about species diversity. First point, species diversity is not uniformly distributed. It changes. Some areas have more, some areas has less. Talking about tropical and temperate, Who has the huge more number? The tropical areas. If you are talking about tropical land area, tropical water area. Tropical land area, we can have an example of tropical rainforest. Tropical water area, we can have an example of tropical ocean area, right? In the tropical oceans, you see coral reef. In the coral reef, the number of organisms is always more. Is the point clear? That's all. So this was the explanation. What do I do now? Okay. So this was the explanation about on the first topic, that is biodiversity. This is the information that you need and nothing more than this. Rest of the information in that chapter. All right. So we have completed the first point. Next, likha. Goteবিলাকৰ meaning ki, it's the same. Classification, taxonomical classification, systematic classification. We'll be dealing with the first word, that is classification. Likha. What is classification? It is a method of placing organisms So, we are talking about the first word, that is classification. What is classification? It is the method of arrangement, right? Method of placing organisms means what? Arrangement. You will arrange the organisms into what? Groups or subgroups. So, what is classification? Arrangement into groups or subgroups is called as classification. Why do you have to do a classification? What is the need for classification? To understand the organism better, to apply the information that we know in other biological fields, etc., etc. As far as this part is concerned, at least from entrance point of view, such a long type of a question would never be asked. However, the question could be asked as, maybe the question could be, what is the need for classification? Number one could be to know the organism better, or to know it's about its evolution, to know about the interrelationship amongst organisms, etc., etc. But you don't have to by heart all these lines. What you need to remember? What is classification? Arrangement. Arrangement into what? Groups and subgroups, right? Okay. This is about classification. Next is taxonomy. So again, definition is not something that you will by heart. What are the points that is important? And obviously, elements of taxonomy is something that you have to read. Okay, I think it's over. Nikahul? Okay. So we are talking about taxonomy. First, we have discussed what is classification. Classification is arrangement. What is taxonomy? A branch of science. It will tell you how to arrange. Is the point clear? Arrangement is classification. How do you arrange, right? That is called as taxonomy. Again, how to arrange could be systematics also, right? As of now, we are talking about taxonomy. The point that is important is what is taxonomy? We understood. The term taxonomy was given by, question has been asked on this point. Most important is father of taxonomy, Linnaeus. What is the full form? Carolus Linnaeus, right? So Carolus Linnaeus. As far as father of Indian taxonomy is concerned, Santa Pau, sometimes the question might be asked, but however, it is not a very commonly asked question. Right? Okay, whenever we talk about something in biology, we often come across these two words, father and Indian father. What is the difference between father and Indian father? Father of taxonomy and Indian father of taxonomy, what is the difference? Father of taxonomy or father of something means we are talking about the person who has started that procedure first. Right? And if you are talking about father of Indian taxonomy, means he is someone who has started taxonomical study in India for the first time. And this one, he has studied taxonomy for the first time in the entire world. Is the point clear? Which point is more important? Obviously this one. Next, we have something called as elements of taxonomy. Taxonomy talks about how will you arrange or how will you classify. Right? Suppose, think about a condition that you went out somewhere and you saw an organism A in the forest. Right? Now, when you see this organism, you want to know about the organism more, and all the information that you have should be given to the rest part of the world also. That is nothing but classification. Right? So, you have identified an organism. At the first time, what will you do? You will try to identify whether that organism, first thing what you will see, whether the organism is living or non-living. Second point that you will consider, whether the organism is plant or an animal. If it is a plant, again the other characteristics, what is the morphology of the plant, what is the anatomy of the plant, what is the chemical, structure of the cells, etc., right? So, when we are talking about an organism, and if suppose you want to go for a taxonomy classification, first, why do you classify? To know the organism better, right? You come across an organism, you want to know about the organism, so what you will do? You will classify, right? So, this organism, if you want to go for a taxonomy classification, you have to study something about the organism, yes or no? So, what are the points that you are going to study? Right? Okay, coming to this point first, is this point understood? First, you are going to identify. You have to identify this organism, plant or animal, living or non-living, etc. Then you start writing its points, right? So, what are the points? How does it look? Maybe you study the morphology, right? Next, you might talk about its anatomy. Next, you might talk about its physiological events, right? You might talk about its ecological role, etc. Are you understanding the point now? We are talking about taxonomy, right? Taxonomy is a method that tells you how to classify, right? What is classification? Arrangement. Why do you classify? To know the organism better, right? So, if you are talking about this organism, you will be studying certain points about the organism. What you are considering? You are considering the morphology, you are considering the anatomy, you are considering the physiology, you are considering the ecology, then you are going to have a report, yes or no, right? This report that you have collected or you have made is a part of what? Taxonomy classification. Is the point clear? Right? So, whenever we are talking about taxonomy, what do? You first identify, then you study the characteristics, and then you arrange. After that, you go for nomenclature. You want to give a name to this organism also, right? And once everything has been done, you divide it into groups or subgroups. As far as subgroups and groups are concerned, you will be, if suppose this is a plant, you will be wanting to know it belongs to which kingdom, it belongs to which order, it belongs to which family, right? So, what I said is, when you are going for taxonomy, we have something called as elements of taxonomy. What is the first step of taxonomy? No doubt we have written characterization, but the first step of taxonomy is always identification. In your NCERT book, elements of taxonomy, NK diya ase, characterization has been written first, identification has been written second. But if the question is asked, what is the first step of taxonomy? It is always identification and not characterization. This is something that you have to remember. Is the point clear? Because we know whenever we go out, you see the organism, the first thing that you do is identify, right? After that, you start going to study about this characterize or characteristics. Then you go for naming, and then you go for classification. And when we talk about classification, we are talking about that taxonomic hierarchy. Is the point clear? Okay. Next point. Those who have finished writing, please read whether you could understand. Over writing, everyone? Okay, you are writing. Is it over? Okay. So, what is the point that we are discussing? We are talking about classical and modern taxonomy. The first point, whenever you hear the word classical, you have to remember it is primitive, right? We will be talking about something called as, now we are using a word called as classical taxonomy. Later, we will be talking about something called as classical classification or primitive type of classification. So, classical means something that's very primitive, right? It was something that was done in ancient times. So, taxonomical study is not something that is new. It has been done since years ago. So, those scientists that were doing it many, many years ago, his type of classification or taxonomy was considered classical. Nowadays, we follow what? Modern taxonomy, right? Now, what is the difference between classical taxonomy and modern taxonomy? What is taxonomy? How will you arrange? How will you arrange will depend on characteristics of the organism, right? So, if suppose we are talking about an organism A and you want to go for a taxonomic study, right? And if this taxonomic study is based only on morphology, if you are you understanding? We have an organism A, you want to go for a taxonomic study. Another case, you have an organism A, B, suppose you want to go for a taxonomic study, right? For doing this study, what you are considering? Only morphology. For doing such a classification, what you are considering is the difference clear? Classical taxonomy, you consider one character. While you are going for this taxonomy or modern taxonomical study, you are going to consider many characters. For this, only one character is considered. Is the point understood? Difference between classical and modern. Taxonomical study, you want to classify, and if you want to classify, you are talking only about its morphology. You want to classify this organism. While you want to classify this organism, are you talking only about morphology? No, you are talking about many other factors also, right? Now, coming to this word, what is morphology? Morphology means, what is the meaning of morphology? To study the outer appearance. Na? You see the plant, you write all the information, how tall it is, how thin it is, how fat it is, right? These are called as morphology. So, we understood this. In modern taxonomy, what are the points that you considered? You talk about the external structure of the cell. External means what? Morphology. You consider the internal structure also. Internal structure means what? Anatomy, right? You talk about the structure of the cell. How does the cell look like? You are talking about what? Cytology, right? You are talking about the developmental processes or physiology also, right? Next, you are talking about ecology also. So, what is the basic difference between these two? So, what is the basic difference between these two is when you are talking about this one, you are considering only morphology, right? Bahirar pa dekhat kenekua, okol hetu sai pe classify korisa. Tak ami ki boli ko? Only morphology. When you are going for this one, what you are considering? Is the concept clear? Deals with one character, deals with many characters. A study with only one character, a study with many characters. Clear? Okay. Out of all the words that we have written, all these words are clear. We know what is morphology, what is anatomy. Cytology, how does the cell look like? Physiology, what is the process that is going inside? Maybe we can talk about respiration, we can talk about breathing, we can talk about digestion, etc., right? Now, what you understand by this word ecology? While you are going for a modern taxonomical study, you also consider the ecology of the organism or the ecological role of the organism. First thing, what is ecology? Morphology, study of the outer appearance. Anatomy, study about the cells and the tissue structure. Cytology, studying the cell. Physiology, understood the metabolic processes. What is ecology? Yeah. First though, what is the definition of ecology? Ecology means ki? The study about one organism or the study about the biotic and the abiotic feature of an organism. Means what? We are talking about an area. In this area, suppose we are considering the organism as A. What is ecology? Study about A, the living organism, right? And the non-living factors also, right? What are the non-living factors? Temperature, humidity, light, oxygen, air, carbon dioxide, etc. So when you are studying the living plus the non-living feature of an organism of a particular area living at that particular point, the study is called as ecology, right? Biotic plus abiotic, living plus non-living study, correct? Okay. Each and every organism in this world has an ecological role. What is the ecological role of an organism? Have you heard the words called as producers, consumers and decomposer? So each and every organism that is present in this world would either be a consumer, would be a producer, or it would be a decomposer. So that is something that is called as ecological role. If I say this organism is a plant, right? So if I say this organism is a plant, what is the ecological role of this organism? It will be a producer, right? If this is an animal, then what would be the ecological role? It would be a consumer. And similarly, if it is bacteria, what would be the ecological, or if it's fungi, what would be the ecological role? Decomposer, right? So first, ecological role, is the concept clear? Either it would be a producer, or it would be a decomposer, or it would be a consumer, right? Each and every organism has a specific ecological role. Coming to this part, this is all about taxonomy. So what we have learned about taxonomy, taxonomy is a branch of science that tells us how will you classify. What is classification? Arrangement into groups and subgroups, right? While you go for taxonomical classification, what are the elements that you consider? First you identify, then you go for its characterization. Next you go for giving a name, that is nomenclature, and next you go for classification, right? Next, how many types of taxonomy is there? As of now we are talking about 2. That does not mean we have 2. We have more than 2 also. But from this lesson we have 2 types of taxonomy. One is called as classical, that is primitive. The other is called as modern. If anything is primitive, if anything is classical, if anything is ancient, it depends on only morphology, right? Classical, ancient type of classification. If you hear this word, you have to know this classification is based only on morphology, right? Anything ancient is only morphological, right? Modern taxonomy talks about all these features and considering ecology also. I think it's clear. Any doubts up till here? What's the time? I think the time is over. You have another class now, right? Did you get the routine? No? Okay. I think you'll be having a zoology class now. Anyway, so this is all. So tomorrow when we have a class, the next part of the chapter would be systematics. And we are going to study what is the difference between taxonomy and systematics, right? Before winding up the class, is there any doubt on the portion that we have completed today? Just go through for 5 minutes and see. Online students, do you have any doubts? Sanjana, Shamima, do you have any doubt? Kiba buji nai poa jodi, you can always ask. So please go through. I think it's over, right? We'll meet you tomorrow. Thank you.